The Blast from Our Past Network.
Podcasting After Dark presents TV Obscura, a deep dive into underrated and unknown television shows from our youth. Cartoons, sitcoms, cop shows, and much more. Sit back and enjoy some nostalgic fun with TV Obscura.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to a back-to-school special of Podcasting After Dark presents TV Obscura. I am 1/3 of the TV Obscura team, Corey, a.k.a. Sleazy C. Joined with me, as always, is my two brothers from other mothers. Well, we're all from different mothers. But Zach, the total Snackage Schaefer, and Dangus Rex. I love it, Zach. And Diallo, the Armageddon Jackson. What's up, guys? Happy back to school. Zach, Bodie, is he in class this year? My nephew Graybear is for the first year.
Yes, he's been back for the past 3 weeks now as of this recording. So back to school happened a long time ago, but typically, as you guys know, when we were kids, school started soon after Labor Day, the day after Labor Day. So that was what kind of spearheaded this whole conversation about after school specials. I'm like, let's do a back to school one, you know, the dark days of after school specials or whatever. And yeah, he's back. And fortunately, he doesn't watch any of these shows.
Well, I don't know if any of these are on anymore, unless maybe reruns. I don't know if Nickelodeon picked them up or something. I should probably say what we're doing. Guys and gals, we are talking about after-school specials in general, because we have 3 different ones. We have 2 from the ABC Afterschool Specials and 1 from the CBS Schoolbreak Special. But in general, we are just talking about after-school specials in general. Diallo, you grew up with these. We all grew up with these, right?
Yeah, I feel like I was a little bit more in the heyday growing up as a kid in the 70s, and so it was actually a big part of afternoons. We'd be set down so that we could learn about life, the things our parents didn't want to tell us. So.
In a very dramatic way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I'm glad you said that. You know, you are very much inundated with this growing up, because of the 3 of us, I have never watched any of these. I never watched after school specials. I knew about them, of course. I always knew about them, but since I kind of was just a latchkey kid playing by himself at home, I just was like, well, I'm not watching this. I'm going to go play my Nintendo or something. But I wanted to contribute to the conversation. I wanted to be a part of this because, weirdly, it's still a part of my DNA. Like, I still say things like, oh, that would make a great after-school special, you know? Like, it's a part of the zeitgeist. So I picked one that always jumps in my head whenever I think of after-school specials, and I'll tell you about it in a second. Zach, what were you going to say, buddy?
Well, yeah, no, I did the same for my as well. And it's interesting about after-school specials because I grew up watching these as well in the 80s. And, you know, a lot of times people associate after-school specials with, like, a very special episode of
Right,
something,
yeah.
You know, like Different Strokes or Facts of Life or stuff like that. But case in point, with your choice, they weren't always, and Diallo's too, I think, they weren't always heavy, like, over-the-top message movies or shows. They were, you know, lighthearted as well and fun. And the cast ranging on these shows was all over the place, from people that you've never heard of and maybe would never see again to people that went on to, like, achieve major stardom in, you know, on the big screen in film. So, you know, these shows were like a huge part of the 70s and the 80s. And I think they tapered off going into the 90s. But my God, I mean, that was always the thing of, like, you know, you come home and your parents are there and, well, watch an after school special because it's, you know, it's good for you. It'll be educational, you know, and I think with my specific one, It got brought into the classroom. It was so powerful, where people the teachers saw it or they heard about it and they wanted to talk more about it as a whole. So yeah, I mean these shows run the gamut, and it's pretty amazing that they like still have a pretty big fan base too.
Yeah. Diallo, was it something that you watched by choice, or was it something that like maybe your parents encouraged you to watch, or was it just a part of the zeitgeist that you couldn't sort of miss it no matter what?
I mean, I have like sort of like two memories of it. So one, I was forced to watch one because it was, I'll never forget this. It was my mom's having a baby. And so I was forced to watch that one. And I remember like being forced to watch it because I wanted to watch like cartoons or something. And my mom like made me sit and watch it, and so I could learn how babies were made. Oddly enough, they didn't go into all of the mechanics of how the babies are made. It's just like the science part after, sperm or
save that for
swimming or
Lifetime
something.
television.
Or save that to
Lifetime
when you're
television.
18 years old and go to the porn
Yeah,
store.
so it still wasn't instructional enough. I mean, to be honest, if they're trying to teach you about what not to do, I guess. But then I also have these memories of just sort of through word of mouth or advertising. There were certain after school specials that were coming up, and it was almost like in a strange way, it's like with like these Marvel and Star Wars shows that like, oh, Obi-Wan's coming, and everybody kind of sits down to watch that one after school. And yeah, that's it. It just kind of like sometimes it was just kind of random. You just kind of passively see one.
But sometimes it would actually permeate into pop culture. It's probably,
Yeah.
I imagine, if they actually got somebody who was big at the time or something, and then or they got big after they filmed the episode, so they could bring that person in and everything.
Yeah.
So occasionally people would actually sit down and want to watch these after school specials.
Yeah, I mean, and like you said, I mean, it was they ran for a long time, so they definitely were, viewed. They had enough viewership to warrant to continue going, and I think also the more so then than now, there was when it came to children's programming, like education was a huge part of that.
Yeah.
That it translates over into like the Filmation in sequences, right? When you would see He-Man and stuff, it was like, I think it was like a legal dictate that they had to put that kind of stuff on those shows.
Okay.
So yeah, it was like that. It lived in that space for so long, where it was like it was there to educate you about whatever. It doesn't, and like Zach was saying, it doesn't necessarily have to be a very special episode where some girl like gets pregnant and we have to, sometimes
or
it's
a drug addict.
Yeah, but sometimes it's just like and like my particular show is just about believing in yourself or something like that, and that's
or
it.
mine's dealing with your kid who's become a punk now.
Yeah, yours was amazing. Actually.
I know. So the three different ones we're going to be talking about. Diallo is going to be discussing The Amazing Cosmic Awareness of Duffy Moon. This was 1976. This was an ABC Afterschool Special. Zach is going to be talking about The War Between the Classes from 1985. This was a CBS Schoolbreak Special. And then I'm going to be talking about The Day My Kid Went Punk, 1987, and that's an ABC after-school special. So it's nice that we have an example of both of them, because they're kind of the same thing in the way that the Avengers and the Justice League are sort of the same thing. DC and Marvel are always aping each other back and forth. ABC,
well, you're
NBC.
making some heads explode out there. Like those Marvel zombies are like, no, it's original. It's the best thing ever.
Quicksilver's Marvel's The Flash.
Right.
It's just all of that stuff. But before we get into all three of them, I did want to really quick sort of give a little bit of a backstory on the ABC After School specials, and then Zach will give a little bit of a backstory on the school break specials. So the ABC After School Special is an anthology series that aired on ABC from 1972 to 1997. I was actually shocked More so for the latter, that it went to 97. That's impressive. Episodes ran late afternoons on weekdays and dramatically presented situations, often controversial, that would be of interest to children or teenagers. Topics include illiteracy, substance abuse, teenage pregnancy, and kids turning into punks. ABC Afterschool Special won 51 daytime Emmys during its 25-year run. The episode that I'm going to be talking about the day my kid went punk was season 16, episode 3. Wow. So it's on for a while. Zach, what is the backstory on the CBS Schoolbreak Special?
Yeah, before I talk about the Schoolbreak Special, I also want to point out that NBC also had a after-school special called Special Treat, and that aired for from 75 to 86.
Okay,
so
wow. So all the three of the big networks were doing this then.
Yeah, because obviously there was tons of programming for younger audiences, cartoons in the afternoon, but there wasn't a whole lot for teenagers. So these were geared more towards teenagers, specifically the ones on CBS. It was originally called CBS Afternoon Playhouse. It started in 1978 and ran till 1996, and then it changed over to Schoolbreak Special in '84. So same format as the ABC Afterschool Special, same message. The episodes ran from anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes. I think mine is actually the shortest of all three. It clocks in at like 35, which I believe that's because it was a short film before it became a CBS Afterschool Special.
That makes sense.
It was straight to video. I think it was actually. Well, I'll get into that when we get to mine.
Yeah, well, yours is the shortest, but also the most powerful.
Yeah, no doubt, and there's a reason behind that too. So, these shows ran for, it's insane how long they ran. But like you said, they won Emmys. They were critically acclaimed. Overall, I think the intention was positive. It's to give kids something to uplift, like in Diallo's case, or educate in my case, or in your case,
be able to actually communicate with the parents. In my case, I think it's show it to the parents and be like, this is how I'm feeling, Yeah, totally.
Ways for kids to find a common ground with their parents, or expose how big of assholes their parents are.
God, so many assholes in all three of these shows, but I mean, you get it. They're going to be a little bit overly dramatic in order to sort of push the plots home and everything. But guys and gals, we have a lot, not just like plot points and stuff, but each of these shows also have a lot of actors and actresses to talk about on them. So, Diallo, are you ready to jump into the amazing cosmic awareness of Duffy Moon?
You can do it, Duffy Moon. Yes, I'm ready. The amazing cosmic awareness of Duffy Moon. It premiered in the year 1976, the bicentennial year of the United States of America. It starred Ike Eisman, who, for me, his most notable famous role was on my brain's completely blanking out right now. Escape from Witch Mountain.
Right.
Yep.
And Return to Witch Mountain. He also was in Star Trek Wrath of Khan. He he did some voice work. He was in a movie that Zach probably loves, the GoBots.
The GoBots, the Battle of the Rock Lords?
The Rock Lords, yeah. He was on a show called Fantastic Journey, who I feel like, Zach, you were going to do that at some point, or you...
We might have discussed it offline,
yeah.
I think so.
He was also just, I'm just talking about stuff that's noteworthy for me. Nobody else will care. But he was in a 2-part episode of Wonder Woman, where it was the Phantom of the Roller Coaster.
Oh.
And there was like this deformed guy that was like hiding out in this amusement park and kind of kind of kidnapped the character, and Wonder Woman had to go to the park and kind of figure out what was going on. And
he's actually done some great stuff.
Yeah, he's been in quite a few things.
Yeah, I mean, he's been in the Voyagers, an episode of Voyagers from TV Obscura. TJ Hooker, he's been in an episode of that. If you listen to our Bachelor Party episode, we talked a lot about TJ Hooker. And he was actually also in Some Kind of Wonderful.
Oh, wow. Yeah, he was in Kung Fu, which is pretty cool.
Dino Riders.
I was just about to call that one out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good shit.
It also starred Lance Kerwin, who he, for most of you, his most noteworthy role would have been in Enemy Mine. He was Wooster.
Love that movie, by the way.
I'd say Salem's Lot for me. Personally.
Yeah, Salem's Lot's another big one. And then a big one for me is a show called Shazam, which he was on one of the earlier episodes. He was also on episode of Wonder Woman and also the Bionic Woman. Great moments for me. Also, Jim Backus. We all know him as the millionaire from Gilligan's Island. He played
Thurston Howell III.
Yeah, Thurston Howell III, Dr. Flamel. And then another really noteworthy actor that was in it was Jerry Van Dyke, who's the brother of Dick Van Dyke.
And who I love and adore as Luther on Coach. That was a show that I watched the hell out of. And to this day, I'll take a Jerry Van Dyke over a Dick Van Dyke any day.
He was also on the Dick Van Dyke Show. For a little stretch. Those are sort of
go ahead. Jim Backus was also the voice of Mr. Magoo.
Yeah, Mr. Magoo. Yeah, you can when he talks in here, it was actually popped into my head that he was the voice of Mr. Magoo. It's so distinct. So Duffy Moon was basically about a boy named Duffy Moon, who was kind of a small runt-style kid, and he got picked on a lot. And he comes across a book called Cosmic Awareness, and it's basically, the idea of it is basically like The Secret.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally.
Like there was a lot of concepts, and I watched this years ago, but
there's
like
a lot of
the
magical
concepts
thinking in this.
And there's even there's a book called Think and Grow Rich, and I think that's one of the phrases that is kind of used in this concept. So basically, it's like, if you think hard enough, like, you can make whatever you want happen. Right.
Yeah.
And this was sort of like The Secret, but like in real time. So like The Secret is more of like, if you're positive over months or something, whatever you want to happen. But he just makes this face and he says, "You can do it, Duffy Moon." Like, he didn't actually say it, but like it was a voiceover that said it. And then whatever it was in that moment that he was trying to make happen happened, but it wasn't always like as he intended. But he wasn't quite aware that he wasn't actually affecting things.
He didn't quite have cosmic awareness.
Yeah, he didn't quite have it. But then in some respects, it actually still happened, and that's the. That's the fun part of it.
And that's magic, baby.
Yeah, that's the secret.
Yeah, it's the secret, baby.
I'm just curious that if The Secret recommends that you practically, almost shit your pants
break your back
in order to achieve your dreams.
Lifting boulders.
Yeah.
Or you fucking scan somebody or something.
He turned those kids into frogs. That's the part actually I remember the most.
That's great.
Ribbit.
Yeah.
Ribbit.
Ribbit. But through the misadventures of the show, he actually decides he needs to track down the writer of the book, who is Dr. Flamel, who is Jim Backus. And when he encounters him, he actually discovers that the guy is pretty much a fraud. And then it's sort of like that, the end of Act 2, where everything you thought was true is false, but he still ends up like kind of figuring out how to use his power. And he's chased by a group of bullies.
Bully gardeners.
Yeah, bully gardeners. That was, and the mysterious leader of the bullies, who was kind of like, he's always being threatened that person was going to come, and it's like a big reveal at the end. So yeah, it was really fun. I actually did not. I think I like vaguely remember watching this in the 80s. Like it might have come on like PBS or something. And we used to have like in the Bay Area, we used to have they called it Vacation Video, and they would have in the summer they would have just a lot of educational programming. And I think that might have been the first time I saw it, but I didn't quite remember. And it actually was in the early 90s, and I'll never forget this. My cousin actually probably will be listening to this episode, because I texted her about this, because it's like a memory we both have. So I was living with my grandmother at the time. My cousin was there, and this TV show came on, and we both were watching it. And I was like my early 20s at the time, or like early like 19 or something. And yeah, and we just we would always say that from that day on. You can do it, Duffy Moon.
That should be your ringtone.
So yeah, I actually remember seeing it really in the 90s, and I just carried it with me all these years. And when you brought this topic up, it was like that jumped right to my head. I was like, I got to do this.
Zach, have you ever seen this one?
I think I've seen like stills of it, but I've never watched this episode. But it brought back so many good memories of like coming of age stories from the 70s and early 80s. It's very much feels like you're watching like a young youth novel, like a coming of age youth novel,
like a YA novel. Yeah,
YA novel. Yeah. I know David Irons, who's listening, will probably get excited about this. That it reminded me a little bit of Kenny and Company, the Don Coscarelli 70s kids on bikes movie. And just because it's a slice of life, it's like an everyday kind of thing. The misadventures of this kid with his best buddy. The casting is so good in this. It's so believable. He has a pet crow.
Yes.
So he's like the crow before the crow. And I won't spoil what happens to the crow, but it's absolutely horrible what happens to the crow.
It's intense.
It's intense. There's a couple intense scenes. There's a very creepy kind of like almost like Halloween-esque type moment towards the end of this. It's very creepy.
It changes.
And I love it.
Theme and tone like halfway through for like a second, which I found very interesting.
Yeah, weird but cool. I part of me was like, this doesn't need to be 60 minutes. This doesn't need to be as long as it is. But by the end of it, the third act, I was like, okay, no, I'm totally into it. I love that kid that plays Duffy. And his buddy too. And my gosh, I loved watching it. It brought back, like I said, great memories of that. This is more like my brother's generation. He's 5 years older than me. And it's like Diallo, like I get it. This is, more relatable, I think, because it came out in the 70s versus the 80s where, the styles were a little bit different. And I didn't necessarily dress or do some of the things they did in this, but I'm like watching it going, yeah, I feel this. I feel this is like everyday, California type thing going on. I loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, the way they dressed actually was interesting to me because the Peter Finley character, he had that football kind of jersey shirt with the 99 that was pretty popular in like the late late 70s, early 80s. But just the way that kids dressed in the 70s is way different, even from the 80s and not especially the 90s. But it was actually like you dressed like kids, and that's not really the case anymore. But also the way that they actually interacted with each other was very 70s. There was like an innocence and a lack of sass that I think really got introduced like in the 90s, like Bart Simpson kind of brought that to the fore. Even like the Boots McAfee, that's just such a like, I don't know, like a 70s kind of like kids antagonist name,
Yeah. Well, it is. I highly recommend seeking out Kenny and Company because it follows along those same lines. It's kids doing their own thing. The 70s were different for kids doing their own thing versus the 80s doing their own thing. The 80s, there was more of a threat of danger This was more like, you're on your own. It's all good. Ride your bikes.
You're not really going to like get that hurt in any kind of scuffle or something,
Yeah, like the bullies end up kind of becoming your buddies at the end, which is, spoiler, is what happens in this case.
Well, freaking, you talked about his pet crow, which I think his name is Joe. So yeah, this kid has like the smartest freaking crow. It's awesome.
It's awesome.
But then he has the best friend you could ever ask for in Peter. And the best. So Kenny, or Duffy, I'm sorry, Duffy Moon. He like he's a shrimpy kid. He's always getting picked on, and then his buddy Peter's always sort of protecting him. So you already got this camaraderie going on. But Duffy is so good with like plants and stuff, and he loves plants and everything.
Begonias.
And especially begonias. And Peter is always encouraging him to like follow his dreams and like it just do your thing, man. He's literally the most supportive character I've ever seen in any kind of fiction whatsoever. And it was really, really nice to see Peter be that supportive of his friend when Duffy was kind of insufferable at some points in this show,
yes.
which is the point, because you want to see him get his big head and everything and have that, kind of get deflated and everything for him to learn his lessons. And his lesson is, believe in yourself, be true to yourself, and also not care so much of what other people think. Now, granted, you can say you don't care what someone thinks as their raining blows down upon you. So, there is sort of some positive thinking going on here that might not be too realistic, but at least it gives, kids some tools to work with here, as a part, as how to like sort of feel better about themselves. And Zach, to your point, I was like, okay, it's going to be 60 minutes of this fucking Duffy Moon motherfucker. But I'm not going to lie. It was entertaining from beginning to end. It was campy, but at the same time, it was sweet. And you really don't get that kind of sincerity or innocence or sweetness in kids' programmings anymore, to be honest with you.
You don't. And this show, triggered actually all three of these kind of triggered memories in me. Like Diallo said, this triggered a memory in him. This triggered memories in me of me not necessarily being kind to people in elementary school for whatever reason, and there was a kid in our school, I think in 3rd grade, and everybody called him No Neck because he had like this kind of shortened neck. And they were like, "Hey, No Neck, where are you going?" or something. And I remember feeling really bad for him. I think I might have called him that once and then felt terrible afterwards. And actually, he and I became friends for a year.
Oh, you became friends with No Neck?
Yeah, I became friends with No Neck.
The amazing cosmic awareness of No Neck.
Yeah,
of Zach
much.
Schaefer.
Like, we didn't hang out, but we were definitely friendly together. We walked the track or we walked the field, but it reminded me of like how cruel kids are when adults are not looking,
or when they are looking and trying to take the picture and don't care that the kid in the front is getting yelled at and run down.
And I will say that tracks as far as the photographer that comes in and take the photo. He doesn't give a fuck. Like they really don't. I remember the photographer would say 2 things, say money, say happy, and like that was the way he got the kids to smile or whatever.
I love how money's one of those things.
Yeah, I know.
Capitalism.
Yeah. And then he was done. He'd split. And I remember I'm looking at in the beginning when Duffy's getting his ass handed to him. And I'm like, yeah, that tracks too. Just kids standing around, not doing shit, not being an ally, just being a typical bystander. Like, I don't want to get involved, And that tracks for that era too.
Yeah.
And I think hopefully it seems like it's changing a little bit.
Well, that's what makes characters like Rudy in Monster Squad so awesome, because we would see them stand up, for the the kids and everything that are getting picked on. Diallo, do you think that this holds up well in 2022? I know that that's a weird question because clearly it's very, very dated, but is the message it's saying, did you feel like it held up under modern scrutiny?
Yeah, I mean, I actually did. I mean, this actually is from a book. So I think based on that is why I feel like the story holds up as well as it does. And I'm not, and that, the execution of the story with its 70s trappings and acting style and stuff, maybe not so much, but the core of it is still there, right? That idea, you could actually do a movie of it now if you wanted to. It would be executed differently, obviously. So yeah, I was actually impressed with how much it looked like it was shot in the 80s rather than the 70s, just from like a technical standpoint.
Agreed. It didn't feel like a 70s show to me.
Yeah, it just like it wasn't like super grainy, and like it was like it seemed well lit and well blocked out, and the sets just looked good, and I felt like they spent some money on it as opposed to something you would expect from 70s, because I love Shazam, which came out like a year before, and those episodes all felt like it was just kind of done in the parking lot somewhere, versus this where it did look like it was an actual production. So
no, you're right, because we covered Shazam, and that felt much more 70s than this did. But I'm not gonna lie, it had some decent humor in it too. The mom of the two frog kids,
the two frog kids, man, she was great.
When she was funny when she was like, "Where's the other kid?" and then the crow comes flying in, she's like, "Bobby!" and
that was
she's like, "No, that's my crow friend." I was like, that was funny. I was like, you know what, that actually made me chuckle. I like that.
That was great.
Zach, did Bodie watch these with you?
No, he did not watch these with me.
Okay. Well, as a teacher, as you used to teach and everything, how did you feel that this like held up, or how did you feel it imparted the values that it was trying to impart?
I love this message. I love that the twist at the end, because at first you're like, wait, is this going to be truly about magic? Is this going to be like this kid does have this power? And I love that it was all about, no, it's believing in yourself. And we all need to be reminded of that, kids and adults, on a regular basis, and have a good buddy or an ally with us. The importance of friends is so key. And I think, you can't show this to kids now because they'll watch it. You show this to a teenager now and they'll be like, nah, this is so cheesy, or the way it's shot or whatever, especially like a 11-year-old, because I think they're graduating 6th grade in this. You remember that when 6th grade, actually elementary school went up to 6th grade. Now I think ends in 5th grade for most schools.
What was that? Was that like middle school versus junior high, or?
Yeah, junior high was like 7th, 8th.
Yeah, because I went to middle school, so I went to 6th, 7th, and 8th, and then high school was 9, 10, and 11.
Yeah, I think it depends on the area of the country you were. Really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or
I was not.
country.
Yeah. For some reason, I was like, oh, junior high's always 7th and 8th. But yeah, I think there's the message is clear and it's positive. I think with all three of these, especially yours at the end, it's interesting.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I like how it ended and everything, and I like the positive note where it wasn't cynical. Everyone sort of became friends at the end with the bullies, and Duffy Moon kind of found his voice and all this kind of stuff. All around, it was very positive. And the old curmudgeon in me is like, that's not realistic. But at the same time, I'm like, it's nice to have stuff like this to show kids, to non-cynical things to actually show kids.
Yeah, I wanted to. I think if Bodie was a little bit older, I would have shown these to him. I think he needs to be a little bit older to get it.
Okay. The fantastic part about the delusion of Duffy Moon, I actually think is like a function of the bullying, right? So it's like it's definitely his coping mechanism. So having him be so delusional actually helps set up the whole idea. And it's like, and actually I think that's why the message can come across, because even the viewer, even if you're a little kid and you're a viewer, you're like, obviously he doesn't have cosmic powers, and he's doing this because he's so hurt. And so I think that's where
desperate.
Yeah, and that's where the core of like the message I think comes through, and that's
Totally.
the universal part I think, where he's like, it's a function of trauma for him and his protector, his best friend, like you said, he's one of the most supportive characters ever, and maybe. I mean, I'm about to get deep. Maybe
Do it,
his older friend is who you need to be for yourself,
Yeah.
and Duffy learns that by sort of like having this person shadow him and kind of serves as that buffer, like when he's about to get beat up and stuff. Sometimes like his friend's standing there and Duffy thinks he's stopping the bully from beating him up, but really it's his friend standing behind him. If you believe in yourself more and more and more, you actually can sort of like affect how other people interact with you. So it's not magic, but it's just how to influence people, basically.
But and then I'm going to push back and say, but it is magic.
But it is
because
magic,
a lot
yeah.
of part of magic is it's also getting other people to believe, like, not your bullshit, but to believe in what you're saying, And,
Yeah.
and again, there's always these ideas in magic that you're not supposed to lie or anything like that, but you are supposed to maintain this persona, like your magical persona. And I think that because of that, you're also going to acquire things, and it's like this, it's like a cycle and everything, but it's also because you're thinking more positively about yourself and everything. And at the end of the day, I think this actually did a great job of showing like magical thinking of where it works and how it doesn't work. When when they're raining blows upon him, and he's like, your fists mean nothing to me, but he's getting hit by them. He's feeling them. Even though he says he's invulnerable, he is still feeling them, and that's where it doesn't. Where the magical you can't magic doesn't protect you from everything like that. But yeah, this is the secret. This was the secret right away, and the secret was just ritual magic without the ritual. Without sort of the pomp and circumstance and everything. And that was kind of how this is. But yeah, it all comes back to just your thoughts create your reality, and Duffy Moon is stuck in this cycle of thinking that he's small and he has to be protected by his buddy Peter until he finds this book, which is awesome that this book gave him this ability to think outside the box, but he needed people around him like his friend to sort of be like, okay, you can still use that, you can take that technique and use it, but make it more true to reality and more true to who you are,
That idea, actually, what you're saying, is when he actually does change the bullies, but it's in the realistic way, right?
Yep.
So it's not in that moment where he's getting beat down, but
No, it's not in the moment that he wants it to happen,
Yeah, but through getting beat down, he goes to go see the guy that wrote the book, finds out he's fraud, blah, 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 all this stuff happens. And then he stays the course so much with like what he believes in that when he finally meets Boots McAfee, then Boots turns the bullies around. And then now they're all friends.
Yeah,
so yeah,
cool.
So yeah, it's definitely, whether you believe in, that stuff or not. I think it's a really good lesson to actually, like kind of stay on that positive path. Think confidently. I always think of life as like
A box of chocolates?
Yeah, like a box of chocolates. Like surfing actually. So you're not going to catch every wave, but you always have to be ready to catch one. So you have to be confident enough to be out there. And eventually when you catch the wave, then that's the wave you're supposed to catch,
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how Duffy ends up at the very end.
You've
So
been watching a lot of North Shore recently?
No, actually, was at a Big Wednesday when I went to see Basil Polidor. So but anyways, that got really deep. I wasn't really kind of like seeing it through that lens, but that's I guess the English major in me always like comes out to play when we were dissecting some of this stuff. So.
and that's why we love having you on the show, buddy. You bring a whole hell of a lot to it.
I was hoping Duffy would turn into a Tyler Durden scenario where Peter was all in his head.
That would be great.
That would actually have been really cool. But I think so far this was a hit for all three of us. We can talk about at the end which ones we like the best. But so far, I think we have a hit on our hands with Duffy Moon. Zach, do you want to talk to us about The War Between the Classes, 1985 CBS Schoolbreak Special? Hey everybody, Corey here. I just want to let you know that we'll be right back after these short messages.
Imagine being one of the last people on Earth, being trapped alone with something not human, something always watching, something always waiting. What would you do? Where would you run? Where would you hide if you were haunted for 7 winters alone?
Podcasting After Dark presents 7 Winters Alone, a dystopian haunted house story by David Irons.
Available now in paperback and ebook.
And now, back to the show.
Yeah, so War Between the Classes is based on a book by an author named Gloria D. Miklowitz. She actually wrote over 60 young adult books that dealt with a plethora of very relatable issues for young adults, such as racial injustice, nuclear war, steroid abuse, date violence, militia involvement. It's heavy shit, right?
Jesus, militia involvement.
Yeah, I'm going to read some of the titles of some of her books. Some of her books are called After the Bomb, Earthquake,
Jesus.
Time to Hurt, A Time to Heal, Carrie Loves Superman, The War Between the Classes, obviously, Anything to Win, I think that's the steroid abuse one, Camouflage, so The Love Bombers, Did You Hear What Happened to Andrea? Paramedic Emergency, so she wrote like I said, 60 novels. This one in particular was made into a after-school special, which won the Emmy that year for Best Children's Special. So The War Between the Classes is the shorter of the three. It takes place in high school. A group of seniors in a class. The teacher has this kind of like a social experiment. And what he does is he assigns every kid in his class a color. There's 3 different colors. There's blue, green, and orange. Blue is the upper class, representing power and prestige and pride and wealth. Green is middle class, and orange, or as they refer to as the rangs, are the lower class. The kids in this in this teacher's class are, they basically take a colored chip out of a bag, and then they're assigned that color like an armband that they have to wear for the duration of this program. Obviously, it doesn't go well because there is already underlying issues of racism in this class, particularly with one kid by the name of Justin. A total douchebag. He's the stereotypical douchebag. His best friend is Adam, and Adam is kind of like he's the bystander who becomes the ally at the end. He's the big, tall, blonde, white guy who doesn't find any sort of racial, he doesn't feel like he's responsible for any of the injustices in the world because he didn't do any of those things. It was all the people in the past that did those things. This show opens up with all the kids watching civil rights era footage and discussing it as a class, and there's a lot of like free form discussion amongst the kids. But once they get into this class of colors, all hell breaks loose. The kids and it's not just the white kids are blue and just the people of color are like the other groups. It's all mixed up, So people you wouldn't expect maybe would have would take a power authority suddenly become, once they get a little bit of that power, do they abuse it? Do they take advantage of it, or do they use it to better the greater good, so to speak. And so this social experiment doesn't go well.
And it also it goes outside of the classroom. Like they have to extend it into their regular lives, and there's actually like people monitoring them to make sure that they're basically adhering to their class structure.
Yes. So they basically, you can rat on people if they're not obeying the rules outside of school, and that will gain you favor with the blue class, and you're able to move up in status if you are, if you like kind of tell on somebody. So the movie, the episode really focuses in on this character Adam and this girl Amy. Amy's a Japanese student that is she tutors Adam's little sister, but Adam has a thing for her and they start dating each other. But as the episode moves forward, she starts bringing up, the inequalities and the prejudice and the racism, and Adam is like very blind to all of it because he's a blonde white guy who's hunky boy on the basketball squad, and he doesn't feel like people today should be complaining about that stuff. He is like the quintessential bystander, but by the end of it he makes a dramatic turn, which is great, fortunately. But there's other characters. He's played by Don Michael Paul, by the way. Don Michael Paul we know and love from the Hat Squad and Harley Davidson, the Marlboro Man.
Yep.
But he actually was in a ton of great 80s movies. If you've never seen Aloha Summer with Chris Makepeace and Yuji Okamoto, go seek that out. I think it's on YouTube.
Chris Makepeace from Vamp, right?
From Vamp and My Bodyguard and Meatballs. I love that guy. The Amy is played by Jan Gann Boyd. She actually was in quite a few 80s movies like A Chorus Line and Steel Justice with our boy John Kreese, Sensei Kreese himself, Martin Kove. She was also in a movie called Assassination, which is a really pretty decent Charlie Bronson movie. A lot of action movies and, a mixture of great 80s cheese. Paul Winfield is in it. He's the principal of the school.
Yep.
He, another Star Trek II reference of the night.
Yeah.
There's our connection.
Yep.
But Paul Winfield is a legendary actor. He's got a very small role. The teacher is played by Cale Brown. He was on tons of soap operas back in the day. He plays Mr. Moyner. James Wilder plays Justin. He's like the quintessential racist asshole that you're supposed to hate. James Wilder's been in a ton of things. One fun movie he was in the 80s was called Zombie High with Virginia Madsen.
Yeah.
That's actually got a great cast as well. But Marcelino Sanchez, who we know and love from the Bloodhound Gang, and of course the Warriors, Rembrandt and the Warriors. He plays Jesse, and he's one of the characters who kind of, sees an opportunity to kind of move up in status, and whether or not he takes advantage of that is kind of left to the people who haven't seen this yet, because I'm hoping people will check this out.
And he passed away shortly after this, didn't he?
Yeah, unfortunately, he died of AIDS.
Okay.
So the guy was so talented. I love that dude. He didn't do a whole lot, but what he did do is obviously is a legacy on screen. At least he has that. There's one cast member, Mary Kay. She's played by Nadine Vandervelde. She kind of doesn't do a whole lot in this episode, but at the end, she's a blue who rips her badge off to kind of join a big march at the end. She's from Critters.
Yeah. And Munchies, a movie that I was talking to David about at some point about the poster and everything for that one. And
I had
Critters,
a huge crush on her. I had a huge crush on her back in the day. She was awesome. This is like a who's who of young teen people. But, a few things that stood out to me was obviously the story, this war between the classes. This had been done in schools, not successfully, because as it's kind of as it's shown in this special, you know, if you got to have a hell of a lot of control over what goes on with the kids, because it just can get out of control really fast. And it does. And it ends up being really bad overall.
It really illustrates like how tribalistic humans can be very quickly too.
Yeah, and I think the show does a really good job of kind of painting all the different perspectives, especially in 1985, that were, you know, across the board. You've got you've got someone who denies that there's any sort of racism going on now. There's the one guy who's like, you know, what are you complaining about? That doesn't happen to you guys anymore. Talking to the Jesse, you know, the Justin character talking to a couple of the different black characters in the show. You've got, you know, this one guy who's like so fed up with everything that's happened in the past and what's happening to him now, and just like so happy to be in a place above some of these privileged white people, you know. And then like the Japanese character Amy, she's got a really great perspective because her father is a gardener, and she's embarrassed about of who she is. And there's her monologue that she has is really emotional and well done.
Yeah, I took note of that one, man. I was like, wow. And they touch on the Japanese concentration camps that we had in America, which, man, I didn't even hear about in high school like at all. So the fact that they even mentioned that here and tried to bring that forward was pretty impressive. Yeah,
totally. I feel like this. I saw this when I was 11, and it was very impactful to me at the time, because I thought Don Michael Paul was really cool, and then his character has like interesting moments, you know, where I'm like, this guy is not being an ally at all, even though he thinks he is. And it was shown, I remember it was shown when I was in middle school by my middle school teacher. And then it was shown again in high school. And I think it's I think for, you know, it's 35 minutes long and it doesn't cover all the bases, but I think it does a good job of actually at least getting a discussion going with kids about what it means to be a person of color in this country.
They're definitely not showing that in Texas today. I'm telling you.
Definitely not.
In Florida? No, it's not.
No.
You'll get kicked out of. You'll get your teacher's license revoked if you show this in either of those states.
And that's the thing. Like, I think this should be shown mandatorily in every school at a certain age. If anything, I think it should be refilmed every 10 years to keep it current. I think the American government should pay for that. The school system should pay for that, not the teachers. I think it should be remade every 10 years to keep it current so kids actually pay attention to it. And they should show it every single year to kids, because what it's trying to say is more important now than ever before. You know, it's illustrating the class war that, you know, the people at the top just really want us to be fighting this class war so that we're not paying attention to all of our rights getting stripped away from us and everything like that. But this is so important, and it's heavy-handed at some points, and it's you know, but I think that's necessary in 35 minutes. You know, it has to be heavy-handed. It has to, you know, kind of be big at some times, but it's also subtle at other points, because Don Michael Paul's character, you know, you're like, you know, I'm watching him like, okay, he's clearly the good guy. He's the ally at the beginning, even though he has a douchebag friend in Justin or whatever that guy's name is. But, like, you know, he's not a complete ally, because he still has that perspective of his perspective and his, like, oh, but that's in the past. Who cares about it now, because it doesn't affect him now. And all I can say is I was probably that guy, like, at that age in high school and in college and stuff like that. And moving to LA really did wonders for shifting my perspective and everything and whatnot. But dude, I was the Don Michael Paul character. I thought I was the good guy. I was probably the bad guy to a lot of people. I might have been an ally to somebody, but I guarantee you I was probably more of a bad person to people than I thought I was. Do you know what I mean? And I just think it's valuable, and we need it now more than ever. The acting was fine. Everything was fine about it. It got its point across. There's not much humor in it, There's not much time for humor at a runtime of 35 minutes. It has to get to the point, and I do truly believe it does that in the 35 minutes that it has.
Yeah, I agree. I don't feel like, Don Michael Paul has a moment where he has two moments. One where he's talking to, I think, she's technically his girlfriend, I guess, Amy at this point, because they're kind of dating. And he says, I never called anybody a beep, 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 and you're like, well,
as
dude,
he's saying them.
as you're saying it. And then, they're arguing and he kind of walks after her, and the gardener is watching. The gardener is Amy's father gets hired to be the gardener of Don Michael Adams' family's house. And so he's working on the front yard as they're arguing, and he stops to see what's going on with his daughter, and Don Michael Paul yells at him, and it's a very powerful scene, because it's not just Don Michael Paul Adams' character being an asshole. There's like 3 layers going on there.
Yeah.
3 different things going on, because it's Amy's reaction and it's the father's reaction too. It's so intense, and you're right. This is not a humorous after school. This is a very special episode.
Yeah.
Type after school, but I feel like it's a great way to open up the door to discussing with kids who don't necessarily see the importance of discussing, or having conversations with someone different than them, period. Because oftentimes people like that. I mean, that's one of the biggest issues in our country today, is not willing to understand the difference between somebody, and that's all this, I think ultimately that's the message they're trying to get across. But Diallo, what are your thoughts on the war between the classes?
Yeah, I mean, when I texted you guys, I was like, I'm definitely going to rant about this one. I'm probably not going to rant, but in that opening sequence when they're in the classroom and they're talking back and forth and they have the civil rights reactions, a lot of the things, this was in 1985, right? And so a lot of the things that they were saying are literally talking points that I hear today to sort of to mute the voices of people that are dissatisfied with their treatment or representation or whatever it is in society. And I'm going to get a little political, but a lot of them sounded like Tucker Carlson, actually. Like he has that, they literally, especially with there's a conversation happening now because the Queen of England passed, and there's a lot of people that just I don't really care because she's a part of this empire that colonized and stripped everything away. And people like Tucker Carlson are like choosing to not have empathy for those people's experiences and instead doubling down on this idea, well, we brought you fire. Man, we brought you technology. Why are you ungrateful? And that's the sort of same, more pointed in the classroom. They were saying the same thing, inferring about like blacks and not like bringing up their treatment in the history of the United States. And always going back to they are upset when people bring up slavery, but they don't understand that, yes, slavery is over, but there's a level of treatment that people of color still have that, it's maybe not as bad as slavery, but it's still worse than what those other people experience, and they just do not want to see it. And that their conversation is always just get over it. And that it's frustrating. I hate to use the word gaslighting because it gets used so much, but that's kind of what it feels like. You know, it's like I'm literally going through something that feels terrible, and you don't go through that experience. You never have to deal with it, but you were telling me to get over it. And also, can't we all just get along? You know?
Yeah.
But you're not doing anything to make that happen. Like the Adam was his name.
Yeah, Adam.
Yeah, he doesn't really do anything to actually make people get along. He just kind of, it's lip service for him, right?
Yeah.
And
well, he says that.
Yeah.
He has moments where he's like, I didn't put that baby in the ghetto.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and those are all things that like I hear, like I listen to a lot of right wing commentary, and I hear all those things all the time, and it's like it really struck me how, you know, I kind of like sarcastically or satirically I bring up the wokeness thing all the time. Like you guys in our tweets and stuff, like something comes out and I was like, what is this woke stuff from 1985? You know, because I mean it's like, and that's when I hear people complain about wokeness, I kind of laugh all the time today, because it's like these are conversations that have been happening for a long time before we were even born, and you're acting like it's new in 2020 because there was the protests, right?
And the people who are like keep telling other people to get over the wokeness and hate the wokeness are also the ones that are saying, "Oh, just get over it. Get over the slavery. It happened 200 years ago or whatever. It doesn't matter anymore. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Fuck you."
Well, I think there's a big piece of that is what both of you are saying is, and I think it's super relevant, is all of those people that are saying, get over this, get over that. Like Don Michael Paul at one point, he's like, you know, seems to me that the Orientals have it okay. Right. And he's very matter of fact about it. The way he says it, it's their, that's their perspective, you know, and they're not willing to see the other person's perspective that's being affected by it. You know, all this, I brought this episode up on purpose because I think I love it. I think it's super relevant, like you said, and I think it's super important for kids to see it. But, you know, there's a guy named Lee Mun-Wah who's he's out of Oakland. He's a professor, I think, but he has a seminar called Stir-Fried Seminars, where he basically takes people from all different walks of life and they're basically therapy sessions where they sit down and talk about their different experiences, you know, being Latino or being white, and like what it means to them, and just to listen to each other. And there's so much talking, like, you know, like Diallo was saying with Tucker Carlson, it's like, but there's no listening going on, you know,
or
and
empathy.
or empathy. And I do appreciate when Amy has her monologue about what it means to her and how embarrassed she is to feel Japanese or to look the way she looks. And I do appreciate that the Adam character is listening to her.
Yeah.
He's also attracted to her. That's why
that's why he's listening.
He wants, you know what he wants. You know what you want.
I actually thought that dynamic was a little, I appreciated it as well, but I thought it was a little, it was actually kind of playing into power dynamics.
Big time.
Especially at the end when she runs into his arms, and it's like he's the one that brings all these people to their senses. And anyways,
with his act of violence, you know.
Yes,
like,
it's okay when he does it, but anyways.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because I looked at it from two different perspectives. One, I looked at it from, here's this white guy who's allowed, this guy's not going to get expelled from school for throwing his backpack through a window.
Right.
But two, there are so many people, and we all know them too, in this country that are like, man, I really feel bad for you know, people of color. Like a white person saying, I really feel bad for this person's situation, but they don't do anything about it. And you're not being an ally. You're just sitting by and you're letting everything happen to you. And I think I like to think at the heart, the intention was, this person who does have power, this is where you can use your power for good, in being an ally, in helping out, and being a part of the group versus the one, you know, because he joins the protest at the end, you know, And I think I would like to think that that's the intention. And if it is, great. If not, I'm assuming it's probably is, because this
I think that it's the intention.
Yeah.
But like, this is coming from my perspective as a black person that watches a lot of white media.
yes.
It had that element of the white savior in it.
Yeah.
Which is
totally.
and that's
Totally.
that's and I actually don't think that there's just anything necessarily wrong with that, the white savior sort of narrative per se, but at the same time, especially in this show that's trying to break down racial stereotypes, I just thought it was interesting that it still defaulted to that, and I think unknowingly defaulted to that.
Yeah.
I don't think that I think that's just because that's kind of how you see the world, and so it's like you look there that they symbolize authority and power, and so they just kind of, he's the one that actually brings home that final message, as opposed to, because they wouldn't have listened to any other a person of color with that same message, and the girl who kind of causes all of that, they wouldn't listen to her because number one, she's a woman, number two, because she's Japanese, and so they wouldn't have listened to her either.
Yeah.
Just really separately though, I actually really appreciated her perspective in this story, because usually when they do racial type stories, it's usually like black and white. And they had that discussion. I think you mentioned it, Zach, about the like a little bit of that model minority idea, where because he's kind of like, oh, you're Asian, what's the big deal, you guys do well, that kind of idea. And she's just like she actually gives her perspective, which is like, there are so many things that you don't see that I have to go through. I still feel different. She's like really raw. Like, I'm ashamed to look the way I do. And like Corey, like you said, you had never heard of the internment until you were like in high school or something. And like, just because of where I grew up, I'm from San Francisco, and they used to have like PSAs when I was a kid, like about the internment and stuff when I was a kid.
Because
but
they were on the West Coast, right?
Yeah.
And I grew up on the East Coast. I think there's probably something with that as well.
Well, no,
yeah,
they were all over.
But I mean, I literally had friends and that their parents or grandparents were interned when I was a kid, growing up. So it was more of a reality in San Francisco, I think. But like, it's even till today, it's a story that's never really spoken about. Like, and it boggles my mind how this happened and we don't really acknowledge it, where the United States government took its own citizens and put them in an internment camp the same time we were trying to liberate another group of people from an internment camp.
Because the victors, the people in power, write the history books. Dude, I mean, it's even worse. I'm open about this because I think it's appalling. When I watched the Watchmen TV show, it opens with the
riots, the
massacre in Tulsa. I think it was.
Yeah, the Tulsa riots. Yeah.
So knowing that the Watchmen movie and everything, it's kind of an alternate reality. I had so little to no knowledge of this actual event that I thought that first episode of the Watchmen TV show was an alternate reality. And I never knew that was actually real. And that show came out like in 2014 or something like that. So I think that there's a powerful message for me personally in that we need to also make these things that have happened in our history, we need to keep reminding people that they happened. You know what I mean? Like, keep having them actually be out in pop culture. Like, again, it was never even taught to me in school about that and everything, or even the internment camps. So that's public school system for you, growing up in the 80s and the 90s. But it's anyways, come all the way back to this.
And it's not to make you feel bad. It's to make you understand what you are capable of doing if you're not aware of what like all that's going on. So I think that's the narrative sometimes they say is like, oh, I don't want to feel bad about my history, but it's not that.
No,
it's
but
like,
you need to feel. But no, I push back on that.
Yeah.
I think it's okay to feel bad. I don't. We live in a world where negative feelings and bad feelings are bad. We should never have them. No, bad feelings are there to remind you not to fucking do this again.
Right.
You know, as a culture, we should feel bad about some of these things. And, you know, to this episode, I do think, like I said at the beginning, I think it should be remade every certain amount of years to kind of update it, because I do think that, Adam, Don Michael Paul, he was the white savior. This is 1985, and I think we can all agree it's of the time. But if you were to remake this in 2022, it would be vastly different. But I think you can do that and still keep the message the same. And if anything, it'll make it even more important now, because if you just try to make it relative to the people nowadays, or the kids nowadays to relate to.
Yeah,
I think
it's a very relevant conversation, because literally people are losing their minds because there's a black
Little Mermaid.
Mermaid.
Go fuck yourself. First off, hold on. I'm going to get on my pedestal. If you have a problem with a black fucking Little Mermaid, go fucking cut your dick off, fuck your own asshole with it, and go fucking die. Because if that's the hill you're going to fucking stand on, are you serious? Like, you're so full of fucking hate that you can't handle an African American or black Little Mermaid? Fuck yourself. Fuck yourself and die.
I saw a meme that was really funny. It was basically like racism is so wild. It's got grown men taking a hardcore stance against a Little Mermaid.
It's amazing. Yeah, you're saying too, this episode being a product of its time, with Adam being the white savior. There is a moment where there's two black characters, they're friends, Rodney and Thompson becomes a blue class, and Rodney, I think he's like orange maybe, and they're sitting together, and Rodney, like, you can tell he's just not into this at all, and he's, because the people who are orange are like being forced to open up people's milks, carry their trays.
It's like a servant class almost.
Yeah, if they get punished, then they have to pay a fine. If they can't pay the fine, then they have to go to detention, which, actually, if you think about it, for a social experiment that's not supposed to be, it's actually pretty fucked up that they're sending these kids to detention. And this class is the only class that's doing it, so the other teachers don't know about it. So when a couple of the kids go to basketball practice late, they get kicked off the team because the coach doesn't want to hear it, type stuff. And so there are some interesting dynamics there that I think could have been explored with a longer episode. But you both were talking about the internment camps not being discussed at all, and George Takei is like the only voice right now anyways, that I know of that kind of talks about his time at the camps. I mean, they made a movie with like Dennis Quaid, I think, where he was married to a Japanese woman who was interned, I think. I could be wrong, but it's like, again, there's your white savior kind of. The focus is on Dennis Quaid. Yeah. There's a Japanese museum here in Los Angeles that does a really great kind of they explore every aspect of the internment camps. And I took Bodhi to it, and this connects with our discussion, because I took Bodhi to it, who's at the time was 7, and there is a interactive exhibit where you hold up an iPad and you see yourself in the iPad. You're suddenly in the camp with the interred, and then there's a beautiful art area where the museum is, that is used to be a street. Well, that street, when it was a street, was where they used to pick up Japanese Americans and pick them up and take them to the camps. So there's a lot of heavy history there. But, facing these things and having discussions about it is the whole point. That's the only way you move forward and learn, and hopefully not repeat it. But yet we do repeat it. We've been repeating it for from 68, well, it's never changed. It's just the labels have changed. And unfortunately, until people in power are able to have these discussions, nothing's truly going to change, because the three of us can sit around and have a very, whether you want to call it woke or not, discussion. But people who are political, like the political allies that we need, have to have the same awareness and ability to talk about these issues. So I think it starts with kids, showing this to kids and getting them on board, because I think you can easily show this now to teenagers and they will not have an issue with it. I think they'll be even more angry at certain things, especially the Justin character, because he openly mocks Amy at one point. Yeah. He says something to the Rodney and Thompson, the two black characters, about like, going back in the fields or some shit like that. Like, horrible. This kid is like a horrible piece of crap who doesn't get his comeuppance like he should.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that is one of the few things in this that doesn't hit home as well as it should.
That was the most realistic part.
Well, yeah, if you know what, you're not wrong.
Yeah, touche, dude, touche.
You're not wrong. So I'm glad I brought it though to the table, because that's what these after school specials, in my opinion, were supposed to be about. Something that entertained but also elevated your sense of consciousness, where you're like, oh, I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Because when I was 11, I didn't think about this shit.
But it's nice to know that it's out there. Like, it's good to know for kids to be aware of that it's out there,
Yeah, and I think it's fast. I like the pacing. I like that it's actually really short, because our kids' attention spans nowadays are very short. And it should be required. I think the book maybe could be updated and would be required reading, because it's relevant. So I'm glad I brought it to you guys. I'm glad we have had this discussion. I think we could continue it for another hour, but obviously we got to move on to some more pressing issues.
I hate this podcast. It's way too woke for me. You guys are
right. No, and I appreciate, Corey, what you said.
Your liberal agenda is way too much.
Yeah, I mean, guys, look, we never really get political. And I think
although people listen do know where we lean, though.
They know.
Yeah.
They know. And honestly, if anyone's listening to this who doesn't agree with this stuff, then I don't know about you, Corey, but I have no problem with losing a listener like that, because clearly you don't want people. And if you don't agree with this stuff, then dig a little bit deeper into why you don't agree with it. Why don't you agree with it?
Yeah, I'm always down to have conversations. But it reminds me a lot of that. I don't know if you've ever seen that older woman, Jane Elliott is her name. She does these experiments with getting kids in classrooms and sort of setting up these same dynamics. And so if you ever get a chance to watch any of her videos, it sort of brings those points home. And I think this show actually also revealed a truth that I believe, which is it's more about tribes and classism than it necessarily is about race. It's about race because that's how we choose to divide ourselves. But if you take
it's the
a
thing
country,
that we can immediately see.
Yeah, you can immediately see. Yeah, but if you take a country that's largely homogenous, they'll find a way to separate themselves through class. Sometimes it's the tone of your skin as well. So race is an issue, but I think it's just there's something about human beings where we just we have to put each other in silos and then other them, and I think that's the truth that I think this show kind of really brings out, because you have in that group of oranges or blues, they were multicultural in those groups,
and inside of it there was no racism inside of it. If there was a white guy and a black guy in it, and both blues, they didn't fight. They didn't say, he wasn't like, oh, you shouldn't be here, whatever, which I like that. I liked within the class, but then at the same time, he's like, oh, how is that my problem? I wasn't born, into it, yada, yada, yada.
Well, yeah. And I just want to say this too. It really, I agree with you, both of you guys, that, the character of Jesse, it's a very relatable character where he can see the advancement of moving up in class if he toes the line, if he maybe just calls people out if they're doing something they're not supposed to do. because they do give you the kids who are in the blue class get to get out of a quiz at one point. Yeah. They get out of like situations where they would have been punished, but they get off scot-free. And so which is very relatable. It's like people see that power and they're like, I want that. I want to feel that.
Like Candace Owens.
Yeah, right. Like it makes sense. And I don't begrudge the kid for wanting to do that. He's like they really, I think they do a really balanced of a job as they could in 35 minutes for an after school special overall. Don Michael Paul, whether he is a nice guy in real life or maybe he's got a big head in real life, who knows? But and it's his character is like he's the stereotype. He's the stereotype in this. But fortunately, there's enough other things that go on where you go, okay, yeah, but the monologues are great, the dynamics are interesting, and
these so far, these first two, like they're like after school specials, and like I think the after school special has we have a dismissive attitude towards the name, but like we're actually kind of really diving deep into the messages.
We're doing what they want us to do, which is talk about the message.
I just noticed that now. It's really kind of funny and interesting. Like they actually are putting these ideas that really need to be looked at and discussed, and we're doing that now. It might be 30 years later, but hey.
And so far, both of them, the messages hold up, and I'd say even into the third one too. But before we jump in there, Zach, I know you had something else to say.
Yeah, no, Diallo, say again. What was the name of the woman you had brought up?
Jane Elliott.
Yeah, Jane Elliott.
Yeah,
and
there's
then
a lot
out,
of videos on like YouTube you might be able to find where she does these experiments with classes and stuff.
Yeah, that's very cool. Very cool. And then if you're interested, check out Stir Fried Seminars. That's another one too, where people from different walks of life can sit down and find the connections that we all have. We just need to have some intense discussions to get to a common ground sometimes.
Yeah. So, or you could just ask somebody something and then listen to their response and try to have empathy as a person.
Yep.
Empathy.
Or cut your dick off. And put it up your butt.
There you go.
It's really about empathy. I think that's where it starts and ends. I think.
Yep.
As they say on Adventure Time, empathy, put yourself inside of me.
Yikes.
Hey everybody, Corey here. I just wanted to let you know that we'll be right back after these short messages.
On the winter solstice, when the lasting darkness threatens to descend upon the land of Atalan once united, Magi in training, Wilt Gairn, and his shepherd, warrior in training, Bredain Adair, must find an ancient lost weapon before the ultimate ancient evil returns to the world of Eos. Hi there, I'm A. Diallo Jackson, writer of the First Noel's Chronicle podcast. The First Noel is an epic, family-friendly adventure told in serialized form. Think of it as Lord of the Rings meets, Christmas. Join us each week for the next thrilling chapter of The First Noel, now available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, and all major podcasting apps, as well as Kindle Vella if you want to take a read. Thanks, and see you in Atalan. The Winter Tell is almost here.
And now, back to the show. Now, maybe we should have had Zach's go last, because it got pretty deep and everything, which I love. I think it's great, but
I need a palate cleanser after that one, though.
Mine's a little bit lighthearted, but at the same time, it still has something to say. The day my kid went punk, 1987. Now, at the beginning of our recording, I said I didn't watch after-school specials or anything as a kid. The reason I chose this one is because that black and white ad that we've all seen from this episode, like the newspaper ad promoting this episode where the kid's at the table with the dad from, the captain from the Love Boat, and, they're sitting at the table and he's got, he looks like a punk and everything. It's like, that's always sticks in my head, and anytime I think about After School Special, I think of this episode even though I've never seen it up until today.
So you never have seen this episode up until today, but this stood out to you enough that this is like the one you wanted to choose to do.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, it is. So I'll get into more in depth, but the IMDb description is: a teen decides to become a punk rocker in order to stand out from the crowd. It's a little bit more to it than that, but we have Terry Warner is played by Jay Underwood. He was an up-and-coming 80s teen, like, heartthrob kid in The Boy Who Could Fly. That was kind of his breakout role. I've seen that movie. He was in Uncle Buck. He was in Not Quite Human. I remember that TV show. Is it a TV movie, I think it was, or
TV
just a
movies,
pilot?
there were like 3 of them. Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, he had a lot of roles when he was younger, but then he kind of faded away a little bit. I'm sure Zach probably knows a little bit more about Jay Underwood than I do.
He kind of lost his hair.
Yeah, I think that might have been what happened. Yeah.
He was also in the Invisible Kid is pretty decent too, with China Phillips.
Okay.
Boy Who Could Fly. Nick Castle directed that.
Oh yeah, that's right. And doesn't he fill like his water guns with piss or something in it?
Yeah, it's Fred Savage is in it. Fred Gwynn is in it. Great movie.
I
think he's autistic.
It.
He's supposed to be autistic.
I might have actually seen it in the theater, I think, as a kid.
Really?
I think my mom took me to see it or dropped me off. Who knows?
That's a great family film. It's a sweet film.
Playing his parents.
Wait, hold on. He was I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He was in the Roger Corman Fantastic Four. He played Human Torch.
Oh,
Yes.
That's right. He did play. I think he had a wig on for that too.
Yeah, I do remember the hair. The hair was very
perfect,
substantial.
Too perfect. Yeah. Playing his parents, Tom and Dr. Louise Warner, is Christine Belford plays his mom. She was in Battlestar Galactica. She was in Christine.
The OG. She was in the OG,
The original Battlestar Galactica, yep. She was in The Greatest American Hero. But I probably recognize her from Battlestar Galactica.
She played.
I recognize her.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
She played Ricky Stratton's mom in Silver Spoons, I believe.
Oh yeah.
And she also was Steve Sanders' mom on 90210.
Oh, yes.
That's right.
Yes.
And she played Arnie Cunningham's mom in Christine, and she is the quintessential bitch mom. Like, she's so good at being a bitch. So I'm sure the actor is a nice person in real life, but man, I cannot stand her as a mom on screen. She epitomizes everything that drives me nuts about parents who don't understand their kids. Nuts.
Yeah.
I fucking hate her.
Are we like
Sorry.
is there like a Christine anniversary or something? I saw you post about it.
Well, yeah, the fictional anniversary, it was the day that Arnie found Christine.
And
the car.
And we'll be covering Christine next on The Carpenter Factor on Patreon next month. So famously, I guess to Podcast After Dark listeners, I always say that The Car was my Christine growing up. I loved The Car more.
Well, wait till you watch Christine. It might change.
Yeah, we watched Christine a few years ago, you and I. It didn't change, but we'll see. but nice try,
I'll tell
Zach.
you, that mom, I will have a lot more to say on the Patreon about her, because, oh, God.
I'm looking forward to it. Playing the dad of Tom Warner is Bernie Coppell, who everybody recognizes from The Love Boat. I mistakenly said the captain. He was the doctor, I believe, on the show.
He was the doctor. It's so nice to see him in a different role.
I know. He was also in Get Smart, a show that I loved as a kid on Nick at Night.
Oh, yeah. Love that show.
He was in Charlie's Angels as well. I'm going to kind of skip around on IMDb. Playing the brother, Craig Bierko, who I always know as the bad guy in Long Kiss Goodnight.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's good at playing a douche, but he's also actually in some... what was that movie he was in? the 13th floor.
13th floor. Yep. Mm-hmm.
He's good in that. He's good in that.
Okay. Yep.
Are you gonna hit up James Noble? You're gonna talk about?
I was going to talk about James Noble. Yeah, I know him from Benson. Probably he was, of course, he was the governor. He's always in my head from that. But he's also in Airplane 2 was another one, big one for him. But yeah, Benson for me, another show that I watched a lot as a kid.
He reminds me of Barry Bostwick a little bit.
He's got a little Barry Bostwick vibes to him. Yeah, for sure.
And great headshot, by the way. Great headshot with the purple hue behind him on IMDb.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. But yeah, so basically Jay Underwood plays Terry Warner. And by the way, I got to call out real quick the famous ad. It's on IMDb when you look this episode up. The famous print ad says, "The day my kid turned punk. What do you do when your bright, lovable, talented kid turns into a punker overnight? The Nelsons are about to find out. Their names are Warner. They're not Nelson in this show," which is fucking hilarious. So, Jay Underwood plays Terry Warner. He's a gifted violinist, but he's also the middle child of a very waspy Republican family. The dad's an author, the mom is a doctor, and she's specifically, she has a seminar coming up specifically about the 80s phenomenon, the punk syndrome, how parents can avoid it. So I guess this was a big deal in the 80s of having your kids turning punk. And thanks to Robert Ortiz, we're going to be reviewing a movie about that called Suburbia. That'll be the next film that we review coming next week. So it's going to be an interesting little tie-in. But apparently, I guess punks were the bad guys of the 80s. I was a little bit too young to sort of be aware of that. But the whole premise of the show is that he kind of has two wants and needs. He wants to be heard by his family because he has a younger sister and an older brother, and he's kind of lost in the cacophony of the family. So he's kind of doesn't really get heard by anybody. And he doesn't want to be a violinist. He wants to actually be in a rock band. And so, his parents are, of course, trying to push him in one way. He wants to go in another. And he has to have this summer job of working at this hotel in their nursery, which I never knew that hotels had nurseries, but kind of makes sense, not going to lie.
Yeah, they do.
Makes sense, though. And
daycare. It's basically daycare.
Like a daycare, yeah. And especially since the hotel is really trying to push the conference factor of it, which I think nowadays we all kind of understand that every Hilton, every Holiday Inn has a conference room and everything. But I think back then it was kind of a novelty aspect of it. So he decides to become a punk. He goes from, blue jeans, white sneakers, and a button-down shirt to in a bathroom, like an airplane bathroom, kind of cuts his hair and becomes a punk. And throughout the rest of the episode, it's kind of dealing with everyone's misconception of him. People think he's going to be rough or whatever, and he's actually super sweet. He's really great with the kids. He's great at his job. So basically they're really playing up the fact that he's a really good person, which is the whole point of this, is supposed to be the juxtaposition of the punk attire with his, goodness and sweetness, and it's supposed to be illustrating not to judge a book by its cover. I did like James Noble playing Max Smiley, the owner of the hotel. Weirdly, he was kind of an advocate for Terry in some ways. He kind of recognized that Terry was good with the kids and everything, and shouldn't be judged for his makeup, but at the same time was kind of well, but why? Why create such difficulties for yourself when you don't really need to create the difficulties for yourself? Be yourself. And then, of course, Terry pushes back. Well, I am being myself. But, he goes throughout the entire hour, the entire 50 minutes of, kind of changing people's minds. The manager of the hotel, Phyllis Brooks, played by Roxy Rooker, just changing people's minds and people's perceptions of things. And, it's kind of cheesy here and there, but it's super sweet and everything. And he doesn't quite win his parents' approval, but he sort of does. And what I kind of actually like about the end of this, it doesn't get so perfectly resolved where the parents are like, we completely, accept you for who you are. It kind of comes to a compromise where, the older brother kind of is the one that extends the olive branch, and he's kind of like, look, we love you no matter what. We just, I think we don't understand what's happening. And he kind of says, look, I've been trying to explain these things to you, but, no one's been listening. So they kind of come to a compromise where, he's like, look, I'm not going to do violin because I can always go back to school for violin, but I can't always be a rock star, basically. And he has like a gig with an actual band and everything. He won the audition, and he seems like he actually has a bright future in the punk scene. And the dad and the mom both seem kind of like, okay, we're cool with it, as cool as we're gonna be. And then kind of Terry sort of has his compromise is he doesn't change his attire or cuts his hair, but he's like, I'll take the makeup off. So they kind of come to a middle ground. I don't know. I've been thinking about it. Like, is that the message? What is the message? Is the message full acceptance because the parents don't have full acceptance of him? Is the message compromise, And there's even a scene where he's talking to his instructor. And I actually like this too, because his instructor wasn't quite an advocate. I thought he was actually pretty realistically written. And he was like, look, I got no problem. Basically the kid, Terry tries out for the school orchestra in his attire, and he has the ability to make it, but the teacher's like, you're not going to make it looking like that because we're supposed to be a team here. You're not supposed to be a distraction from other people. And he's like, you have the talent to do that, and I also believe you have the talent to be a rock star if you want that. And he's like, and I think you could go either way. You just can't have your cake and eat it too. And I really kind of like that. I like that it wasn't black and white right there. And he was like, look, man, basically the teacher was like, I support you both ways. And I think you're going to do a great job. And you have the talent of doing both, but you can't do both. And it's just not the society that we live in. And I kind of really enjoyed that. And yeah, I've been thinking about it. Like, do I like or dislike the fact that it's not black and white and everything? And I think, yeah, I like that this ends in sort of a gray area, because I do think as well kids need to learn that life is also compromise. It's not always you win or you lose. You can compromise to where you both feel like you're heard, and I think that this show did a decent job of that. Again, I think with the lens of all of these shows, it might be able to be made better now with more current, values and everything. But I think for the time, I think this did a good job of illustrating different points of view and how sometimes there is no solution that is correct, and that maybe all that's left is just compromise. So, Zach, did you ever have any experience with this episode?
No, I'd never seen it. I was totally familiar with it, though. I was thinking about relevance nowadays, where they would compromise and they could make it, the day my kid turned into a TikTok superstar or something, or wanted to be the next YouTube, because I noticed that seems to be a very relevant thing with a lot of kids these days, where I'm going to be the next YouTube person, or I'm going to be the next TikTok person. That's fine. But just making videos of yourself all day isn't going to carve out a realistic future for you unless you have something that's truly going to set you apart from everyone else. Have some sort of backup plan, find your other interests too. I'm saying this specifically because I've heard kids say that shit, like, I'm going to be the next YouTube sensation. Where it's like, well, what is it about you that makes you so good? How are you, are you like Zach King? Can you do magic? Or you just think you're funny being on camera? So you could do that nowadays. But I didn't watch it then. This was definitely super lighthearted, but also very frustrating too at times, because the parents are so realistically anti anything that would embarrass them, and I think my mom was never that way, but I feel like my dad and my stepmom at the time when I was younger were definitely like that. Like, don't embarrass us. Don't do anything. Don't get an earring. Don't grow your hair out. That's what girls do, When they make that comment, like, the mom's like, he says, the kid says, I want to get my ear pierced. And she's like, over my dead body. And I'm like, okay, then you're going to die. Like, fuck, what's the big deal?
And I remember in the mid 90s, I got my ears pierced when I was in high school, and I didn't have a problem showing them to my mom, but it was my dad that I was a little apprehensive about. And I was even more apprehensive about my buddy Luke's dad, seeing them, cause I grew up with him. So back in those days, he had just as much validity to chastise me or, punish me if need be, because that's how things were back in the day. But yeah, and this kind of hit home a little bit too, because also around the time that Demon Knight came out, I shaved my head because I was a huge fan of Billy Zane in that movie, and I loved that movie. And then everyone thought I was a skinhead, and I was like, no, I'm just a nerd. I'm not a skinhead, So I kind of get that feeling of, I understand where he was coming from, which is like, you also have to defend your look too. Like, no, my look is not who I am to my core, or it's not what you think it is, essentially,
Yeah, and I feel like they handled it really well. They had different perspectives from other kids towards the end of the episode, and I agree with you. I like the kind of compromise at the end, because he's like, whoa, let's not move too fast. I forget what he says, but when they're like, get a haircut or whatever. But I was surprised that it was the brother, the older kind of douchey brother, who ends up having the nicest monologue or heart-to-heart discussion with him that his parents should have had with him, let's be honest.
But isn't that a little bit more realistic, though?
I guess it is, because they were like such sticks up their asses. I feel like the dad was a little bit more kind of supportive than the mom was.
I honestly, completely based on just that newspaper ad, I thought the dad was going to be the hardcore villain of it, and he actually wasn't. He was a bit more supportive of the mom.
He was, and I appreciate that they had the older brother, kind of have his moment with him, and also the sister too, acknowledging that they really covered all the bases. One thing I wanted to point out was the version you sent Diallo and I. The last 2 minutes last 30 seconds were some weird music video.
Yeah,
so I was able to find the other, there's like 3 or 4 versions online, but the one that you did send, I appreciated it because it's from Nickelodeon, and there's commercials throughout, and I got to tell you, out of all of these things, I want a string racer so bad.
You mean a rip-off Sky Commander?
Yeah, I remember that toy.
It
was like $9.95 shipping and handling. You put your little action figures in the bubble of the thing, and you can string it across the room, and it was so cool, and it was so nice to see these vintage, late '80s, early '90s commercials. It was great.
Yeah, it was fun. Diallo.
Well, yeah, I have so much to say, actually. First of all, you guys know I watch a lot of TikTok, actually, and I actually don't think you need to be particularly talented to get a following on it.
True.
I just the most random things, for whatever reason, people like follow, like Chupapi Muñengo. I don't know if you ever heard that, but it's just like,
nope.
This guy walks around, he's like Chupapi Muñengo, and he just walks around to people, and you just sit there, and I can watch that for hours. So you don't have to be talented.
Okay, I stand corrected.
But kind of following on your point, I do think that there's a few things. So them using, Corey, you mentioned the bad guys, the villains were like the punk rockers, and that was sort of like seen as the antagonists of society. And I think especially in the late 70s, early 90s, punk rock was that. It was sort of like the counterculture of the time, based on whatever the perceived agreement the society has. The youth always comes in and tries to counter that in some way, and often it comes through music, because music is often revolutionary.
Yeah.
So having it be punk rock in this context was almost like, because it's being filmed in a production, was like a little too late, but still, yeah. It's even what do you call it? The Dark Knight Returns, the elements that he used for the Joker's followers, they all had that punk rock aesthetic.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like that's just kind of like what it was. Like that was the last thing you wanted to be. But it's a function of youth, right? So like when youth are coming up, they're trying to find their own way. So it's like a dual metaphor, I guess, because like when you're in high school, junior high school especially, you're trying to find your identity. And usually it gets played out in the way, well, it doesn't get played out in as distinct a way as it happens in this show, but it's like, yeah, you kind of find your lane and what you kind of think you can fit into. Another example was one of my favorite shows of all time, Degrassi Junior High. In the very first episode, a character named Steph, she's like, she's like the pretty girl, and she goes to school, and in the bathroom she changes into like really risque outfit. So that's what she decided she wanted to be when she wasn't at home. So she had this new personality. That was the first thing I thought of when I saw him changing into his punk rock outfit. And to children of today, I think that they do it by challenging the idea of gender. I think that's where it really their idea of
that's the new
challenging punk. Yeah, it's like they're sort of like looking at what a society has established as the rules, and they're like, well, these rules don't necessarily apply to me, and it just keeps marching down the line, and their kids are going to find something, and their kids are going to find something. So anyways, yeah, so it's like, it's just like, it's this universal thing that always is going to keep happening and cycling. And that's why I think it feels relevant. And it basically, it's just like, appreciate me for who I am. And I think that's what I really valued the music teacher's message, because he was just like be who you are, but understand that
there could be consequences to it.
Yeah, you can't necessarily get to do everything that you want to do, because not everybody's going to agree with that. But you should still do what you feel is true to you. So like if you want to be an attorney, you can't just expect to walk in dressed with holes in your jeans and no shoes and stuff like that, and you could be
looking like Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, right.
And then be expected to be taken seriously. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, you could be the best attorney ever, but like if you walk in looking a certain way, you just have to understand that dynamic will be there, and you could be a person that tries to challenge that, so that it doesn't matter if you wear whatever you want to wear. But that's sort of like the message and lesson that this kid has to go through in this
and the teacher was the best part. Like I was not expecting, I thought that was going to come from the parents, like the big life lesson, but yeah, it came from the teacher, and I was like, oh wow, you guys are, you got something to say here. So Zach, what were you going to say, buddy?
I think too, another dynamic, I totally agree with you, Diallo, about about gender and how trying things on that feel right at the time. I think also you could make a case for tattoos nowadays. Mm-hmm. My brother specifically has he's very opinionated about people who he feels like judge him because of his tattoos, and so he's constantly posting photos of like doctors who say, did you take me seriously when you didn't know I had tattoos or something like that, when I was saving your life with your heart or whatever. And there's this stigma against people with tattoos, people with tattoos are, people in prison or whatever. And I remember when I first got my tattoo, and it's the idea of like, look, you just got to know that there are going to be people in this world, like the teacher said. You've got to understand that people are not necessarily going to understand you, or they're going to look at you a certain way, and you need to be willing to accept that, and accept that not every area of this, not every aspect you can just walk into easily and be like, okay, yeah, there's going to be that level of judgment there. And he's right. Like, I like that you're part of a team when you're on the orchestra, it's not, you're not in a band, but going solo. And if there was a punk rock orchestra, then everybody, like if they all look that way, that would be again, that would be uniform as well, you know?
I just wasn't expecting that message to come from this. I thought it was going to be a bit more cut and dry, a bit more black and white.
I like that, though.
Yeah, me too. And I think we can all agree that all three of these episodes, they did their job, and I think all three of them hold up particularly well for various reasons, and I liked all three of them for various reasons. I think Zach's is the most important, maybe. Zach's is probably the heaviest, but I think mine and Diallo's did a good job of kind of keeping some things light and breezy, but still imparting the message that it's supposed to be imparting. I can see why these shows win Emmys and everything, because every single one of these, I think a kid should watch now in 2022. I think the better option is to remake them, because we're not talking about movies like The Thing or something like that where like we cherish these films. We're talking about, it's the idea behind them that is more important. So if it takes remaking them with sort of more modern visuals and modern values, but still maintaining the core idea that you're trying to impart, I'm all for it, because I think more people need after-school specials in their lives nowadays than ever before.
I think you could turn the war between the classes into a reality show.
I really think you could too. That's a great idea. I mean, someone would die. Like, that's the thing. You turn that into a reality show, someone fucking dies for sure.
I think it'd be really interesting. I mean, it would be hard not to have it be as hands off as possible. Literally, just cameras in the room. But it could be interesting.
Yeah. But Zach, overall, final thoughts on all three of them?
Yeah, I can't choose one over the other because they're all distinctly different.
So they're all so different from each other.
Yeah, but I'm glad that we all brought something different to the table, and varying degrees of intensity. I'd say yours was the lightest, and Diallo's was actually, there were some dark moments in there, some intense moments. With the crow. I swear to God, the crow was like, I think maybe that was the hardest thing for me to take. I'm like, that poor crow didn't do shit to that kid. And how dare, damn it, don't do it. Anyways, I'm glad we watched all three, and I'm glad that we had the discussions we had. We got deep. This is a deep episode. So, and there was enough laughs in there too, guys. So don't worry. And, we'll be back on track. I think we're doing an animated one next, but
we'll be scheduled for an animated. This one's pretty heavy, but I mean, I think it was expected, and necessary. I think it's necessary too, and because we are well-rounded human beings, we're not just black and white. We're not just carbon copy cutouts or whatever. We have feelings. We have thoughts. Speaking of thoughts, Diallo. Zach, don't kill my segue.
Go. Cut me out.
I'm gonna keep it all in. Diallo, final thoughts on all three of them?
Yeah, I mean they're all great. And they're, like Zach said, in their own way. I can't really necessarily pick one over the other because they are all really different. I like the one I brought. Obviously, I like the most. I think it's more. How do I say it? More universal in its story, but it does have that deep message to it. But the punk rock one, I actually liked the it's sort of like the wish fulfillment of it. And then obviously the color one was just whew. It was very almost triggering to me when I was watching it initially. Like I said, I was hearing these people in 1985 saying the same exact thing I hear people say today, and without any awareness that this is a conversation that has been going on for quite a while, and just all, again, all three of these it just goes to show you that education should be one of the most important things that we have. We need to have discussions, conversations. We need to think critically. when we don't do that, we start to fall down a rabbit hole of, Animal Farm-esque.
Tribalism.
Just like we would just follow whatever anybody tells you, and it's disappointing and disconcerting to see that that's what's happening to a large section of the populace. And when I look at it, I'm like, oh yeah, it's because they probably didn't really take their education very seriously, and it's not necessarily about knowing how to count all the time. It's knowing how to think and process things, and if you can think critically, you can listen to something a politician says, whatever side of the aisle they happen to fall on, and know not to just take them at face value, because you can process that there's an agenda behind it, and you can then make an informed choice of whether you want to follow that or not. Most people don't think have that. So.
And just like the Mortal Kombat 3 arcade machines, banner was knowledge is power, forever and ever. That is true, whether it comes from Mortal Kombat or not. Knowledge is power, and people who want to take away books and ban books and stuff like that, I'm sure they'd be more than happy that these after school specials would also never see the light of day again either, because a lack of knowledge is how they stay in power. So I do hope that I know our conversations tonight were very heavy for our podcast, but I don't know. I mean, I think they're necessary. And
I'm gonna have to wind down with
I know, seriously,
a shot of whiskey or something.
This is like the heaviest we've ever done.
I'm all worked
I thought
up.
I thought the Mortal Kombat game said cut your dick off and put it up your butt.
Shove it up your own fucking ass.
Was that the one that killed Liu Kang? Or was that, which one was that?
I think Johnny Cage did that.
Cage.
Oh,
Come over here.
get over here and rip your dick off. Oh man, good times, guys. Good times. Diallo, what you got going on out there in the podcasting world, my dude?
Oh man, geez, it's been a very eventful past couple weeks for me. I have a lot of promising, really good, exciting things that have come up in terms of projects that I am looking to put out to the world. Right now, the biggest news is that I actually have a professional company that will be editing my the First Noel podcast. So I'm going to be reissuing the episodes.
Put them out like a remastered version, basically.
Yeah. So I'm going to actually I'm going to re-record them, and so it can be new productions, and moving forward, they will all have that new production. So we're working on that right now.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah, and because as you know, that was my very first foray into doing that, and I was learning as I went along. But at the end of the day, I am a writer and a creator, and doing the editing isn't my jam. But I actually have someone that is highly professional, has worked on film and music, and so they're going to be doing that. And I've already listened to some samples, and it's going to be great. So there's that, and then some stuff brewing again for Angel in the Dark. Looking to doing some stuff, bringing that back. But that'll be some stuff that we'll talk about down the line. So right now, First Noel, and we'll see what else hits.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I'm very happy, dude. That's really fucking cool to hear.
Yeah.
Zach, what you got going on, buddy? What's going on $2 late fee this month?
Well, something that I'm about to announce for the first time. It's this Saturday, September 24th. We will be celebrating our 3-year anniversary on $2 late fee on a YouTube live special. We're doing a fundraiser for Matt Adler. He's from North Shore, Whitewater Summer, Dream a Little Dream, Team Wolf. Mostly people know him from North Shore. He is a part of a charity called Momentum Wheels for Humanity. They supply people who require wheelchairs with motorized wheelchairs to kind of give them more freedom. And it's a great charity. And so we're doing a fundraiser / anniversary celebration on YouTube Live. It's going to be on Twitter, Facebook Live at noon Pacific Standard Time on September 24th. We're going to have celebrity guests. We're going to do some fun segments. It's going to be a hoot. So tune into that. We are doing that. You've heard it here first, folks.
That's
we
awesome.
haven't announced it anywhere else. You will probably, if you want any more info, go on our Instagram page. We will, at the time of this dropping, we probably will have a little promo as well on there. But yeah, we thought, how can we celebrate our 3-year? By doing something, our motto is the good guys always win, even in the 80s. Well, now the good guys can give back by doing a fun fundraiser.
That's awesome.
In the fundraiser coincides with amazing Blu-rays we are going to be raffling off. So if you give money to the fundraiser, you get a raffle ticket depending on how, the tickets cost a certain amount of money. And we'll be raffling off Kino Blu-ray. Supplied us with a plethora of great Blu-rays that are in line with, the Pad movies and $2 late fee movies. Vinegar Syndrome gave us some movies as well. There's going to be some other prizes too. So check it out. Lots of prizes, lots of great Blu-rays.
Awesome.
On our program.
Awesome, dude. That's fantastic. Yeah, we'll help you guys promote that too.
Zach, can I ask you a question? Since it's the 3rd year and due to inflation, are you going to possibly change your name to $3 late fee so you could stay in
Just
business?
win track. Yeah. Just win track.
Stay relevant. Fantastic.
Oh,
well, I'm
No.
No.
But Corey, what are you doing over on your end?
Oh, if I'm not over here on Podcasting After Dark, editing my life away, then I'm on Cartwright, a Seinfeld podcast, talking about Seinfeld or Curb Your Enthusiasm. Adam and I are almost done with Seinfeld proper, but we are only done with season 4 of Curb, and Curb's been announced that it's been renewed up to season 12, so we have a lot more Curb to keep going through, but we're having a blast there, and of course always having a blast here on Podcasting After Dark, talking to both you guys, and Zach and I have our reviews and everything, and it's always a good time with our interviews and whatnot. But I hope you all are also checking out on Patreon, patreon.com/podcastingafterdark, The Carpenter Factor.
Yes.
Zach, we had a fantastic discussion on Halloween 2.
Woo.
That was last month. This month, we are revisiting The Thing, a movie that we've already obviously covered on the show feed proper, but we are revisiting it on the Carpenter Factor, looking at The Thing as a part of the whole of his, filmography and everything, John Carpenter's filmography. But we do have Adam joining us from the Blast from Our Past podcast and Throwback Trivia Takedown, also from Cartwright to Seinfeld podcast. And what he's bringing to the table is it's the first time he's ever seen John Carpenter's The Thing. So
shocker.
That leads itself to some interesting conversations. And, in the world that we swim in, it's, should I say the waters that we swim in, it's not easy to find someone who has never seen John Carpenter's The Thing. So I think that was a pretty unique conversation that we had with them. But
it's honestly been the most upbeat I've ever heard Adam be on, and like not shitting on something for once.
Yeah, he actually very much enjoyed it. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. So look forward to that one this month. Christine next month. And of course, we're going to be doing all of them up until the last movie he directed. I forgot offhand.
The Ward.
The Ward. There you go. So we're going to cover all the way through that. And it's supposed to go until the end of next year, but since we inserted Halloween 2, we may have to kind of do a double recording in December to kind of keep it to 2023, but we'll figure it out. But we're having a blast. I hope you all are enjoying it. If you sign up to our Patreon, you also get access to ad-free versions of the regular show and all our entire back catalog of interviews after dark, all the ones we haven't released to the public yet. And of course, you help us. So, and, a free way to help the show, if, can't afford Patreon because of inflation, then leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. The same goes for $2 late fee. Same goes for the First Noel Chronicles. A 5-star review for all of our shows helps everybody. It helps everybody immensely. So please do that if you can't afford to give, to the Patreon. But
we're all orange and green here, guys.
Yeah, none of us are blue. None of us are blue over here, guys.
I'm trying to be blue. Forget you guys.
We're all trying to be blue.
We're trying to be blue. But let's all help each other get to be blue.
Let's all help each other get to be blue. But this was a heavy episode, guys and gals. We appreciate you all making it through it with us. But we hope we were entertaining as well. Next TV Obscura will be a lot lighter. We'll do, I think actually the next one, Zach, won't be a animated one. I think it's going to be October. So we're going to have to figure out, we're going to have to talk offline. We all want to do guys and gals, we want to fucking do werewolf. That's what we want to do.
I mean, we could do Erie, Indiana.
But we can't fucking find werewolf anywhere. So we may do another hodgepodge, or collection of episodes or whatever. We'll figure it out.
We have to go to France to get that. Was it France or Germany?
Somebody,
Germany.
Fuck. God damn it. Why doesn't it come out over here?
Yeah.
Music rights. It's always music rights. But next month, October. So it's going to be spooky season. So expect a spooky TV Obscura next month.
Spooky.
And until then, as always,
catch you on the obscure side, Duffy. Moon.
Nice.
Be sure to subscribe to Podcasting After Dark and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. Support Podcasting After Dark on Patreon. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Podcasting After Dark. And visit us next time for another installment of Podcasting After Dark with Corey Stevenson and Zach Schaefer.
Hey everyone, co-host Corey here. I just wanted to take a quick second and say thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. Without you, Podcasting After Dark would not be possible. If you would like to help the show grow, please consider signing up at patreon.com/podcastingafterdark. You can also support the show by purchasing one of our awesome t-shirt designs on our merch store at podcastingafterdark.com. or by picking up a copy of 7 Winters Alone by David Irons on paperback, hardback, or Kindle. Just search for 7 Winters Alone on Amazon or click on the link in the show notes. A free way to help out is to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Those reviews are huge for us and really helps get the show in front of new listeners. Again, thank you all so much for the love and support you've given us over these past few years. It really means the world to us.